Yes, this is another good question, and one that you need to understand. The government did, the U.S. government did confiscate physical gold and silver holdings from American citizens back in 1933. But to really understand the issue, you have to first really get the picture of why that happened. Back then, our currency, the dollar, was convertible into physical gold or silver. In other words, you could walk into a bank with a $10 bill, and the bank would measure out at the subscribed rate of gold and silver that amount of gold in exchange for your currency. Now they did that based on the Constitution and having a sound money, right? That's backed with something real. In 1933, we were in the fourth year of the Great Depression. Things weren't getting better; they were actually getting worse, and people started to get worried and started running on the banks, wanting to cash out all their paper money in exchange for physical gold and silver. To stop that process from happening, Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued his infamous confiscation order. I was here recently, not too long ago, in the Denver library. I was looking up and wanted to get a copy of the actual confiscation order. And this older librarian, who had obviously been there for a long time, said to me, well, I've never heard of that. And I said, well, it happened. And so she was curious. She went on a hunt with me to find it. And as she looked at it, she was just amazed. She goes, how come I never knew about this? Well, the public school system doesn't really teach us a lot about our history, our true history, right? And she was amazed by it. And she read it, and she goes, I never knew this had happened in our country. Well, it did. And after they paid them for it, the U.S. government did pay them for it, but after they paid them for the metal, they raised the rate by almost double. So essentially they ripped the citizenry off. And American citizens couldn't hold physical gold and silver legally until the early 70s, when gold was no longer held in central banks. The U.S. government was able to convince everybody to hold U.S. dollars as the ultimate reserve currency of the world instead of gold. Well, what a coup for the United States, because that really put a lot of things on an unlevel playing field where we got unfair advantage, particularly against third world countries who were struggling, right? That's why Americans were able to go have cheap vacations, super cheap vacations anywhere they wanted, Mexico, Indonesia. You could go at these places for 2 weeks, live like a king or queen for next to nothing. So how likely is that a confiscation? Now that we know why it happened, okay, there's no impetus for a confiscation to happen today based on what happened in 1933, because our dollar is no longer convertible to gold or silver, right? It's just a piece of paper, and the only thing backing it is politicians' promises. And we all know what they're worth these days. So, I don't believe a confiscation is going to happen for this reason. Now, if you ask me, I'll take this question in a second part. If you ask me from the standpoint of could it happen under any circumstance? Well, sure. I mean, governments are known, they have itchy fingers always trying to get their hands on other people's money. But the reason I don't think gold will be confiscated ultimately is because if politicians confiscate gold and silver, indirectly they essentially put the official stamp of approval on it as money. And politicians don't want to do that. Based on the Keynesian economic fraud that's going on of creating dollars out of thin air and pumping it into the system, thinking we're going to have economic, Garden of Eden, right? They hate gold and silver, right? That's why they're always aligned against rising gold and silver prices, because what it tells the populace is that this last 10 years, gold and silver have gone up. Well, the politicians don't want that. It tells the people that something's wrong. Well, something is wrong. It's like the canary in the coal mine, right? The coal miners used to use canaries in little cages because of the methane gas. The methane gas will kill the miners, but it'll kill the canary first. So if they saw the canaries die, they knew to get out of the mine very quickly. A rising gold and silver price, especially rising rapidly like it's been the last 10 years, is a sign that something's wrong. I think you're going to see that all over. People are going to move towards it, even if governments don't. Eventually, they're probably going to have to go with the ultimate measure of value. What is it? That's why gold works, because everyone agrees it has value. What else could you agree? Well, we agreed that the dollar has value, but now we find out that was a scam, right? So we're going to have to go back. Governments are going to have to go back to some, I think, a basket of currencies where gold is one of the currencies, because gold is the ultimate money. It's the ultimate currency. There's no better form of money than gold. So I think gold will be part of a solution again, as it should be. The founding fathers in the very first articles of the Constitution, they had terrible problems in the 13 colonies with a fiat currency called the Continental Dollar. It was a disaster. They had so many problems from it. So obviously when they went to make our great country and started out right in the Constitution, they made that one of the first articles. You will always back your money with something real, physical gold and or silver. And the country, basically, if you go back in the history of America, it's this battle between the bankers who want paper domination and control so they can abuse it, and going back to an honest monetary system that's backed with something real like gold and silver.